To me, it was delightful. Honest to goodness village. There were brick walks that the Village Improvement Society built. Then they had oil lamps on the streets. Nearly everybody in town had half to 1 acre of ground. It was just a delightful atmosphere. I still can't get over it. I still say, I'm going to the village. Everyone in Falls Church used to have a front porch. I would love to just sit on my front porch watching the world go by, or just being still.
I'm here with Kathy Salgado and Diane Morse on the, it's a very lovely day in the spring at Cherry Hill Park. We're at a house that's on the property here at Cherry Hill Park. And one of the questions I asked earlier when I just met you was, what actually do we call this house? I know it's functioned as the senior center and several other things, and currently it's functioning as a part of the Park and Recreation Department, and Kathy's going to tell us a little bit about that. But when was the house built, and who built it, and can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. The house was built in 1909. The two people most connected with the house are Charles Gage and his wife, Kathleen Maud Riley. And Kathleen is one of the Riley daughters that grew up at Cherry Hill. And this house is actually on a 66-acre tract that was all part of the farm, Cherry Hill Farm. And the Gages lived here throughout their lifetime. And the house originally had the nickname Poverty Pines, and it was nicknamed by Kathleen Gage. And that was because of the pines, the type of pines that grew here at the time. And they were native to the area. They weren't ones that were planted, and so they were nicknamed.
Volunteers.
Right, Poverty Pines. But since the Gages lived here throughout their lifetime, Kathleen died in 1968 and Charles in 1972, the house is most commonly known as the Gage House. And today, as you mentioned, it's the Senior Center.
Well, it's really nicely sited. It's an unusually deep front yard for Falls Church. The Great Falls Street is down their ways, and it's pretty lush in terms of trees, and it's just a really nice place to be. The family life at the time they built this. Imagine how they might have used this porch at that time.
Well, I think most people in the days before air conditioning, this was really used as another room of the house, an extension. Certainly it was one of the cooler rooms, and if you notice, this won't get the afternoon sun, so it's a nice cool place to be in the afternoon. It would catch the breezes, be a little less stuffy than inside the house. Also, back then, people, as they do today, would sit here, watch neighbors go by, a way to see people, watch what was ever going by on the street at the time.
Well, this house this is the only place it's been. Is that true? This is
right.
Where it was built.
This is on its original site.
And the original foundation is actually some Tinner Hill stone. I was noticing as I walked around there. It's been pretty famous. Been made more famous recently by the memorial that was done down on Washington Street.
Right.
These days, Kathy, how's the porch and the house used?
Well, if you haven't heard, recently the Recreation and Parks Department moved over here with the renovation of the community center. The administrative offices have moved here. We are using both the first floor and the second floor. However, we were able to leave part of the first floor available as a senior center. So we still have a lot of our senior programs here.
we're loving it over here. We did not have windows. We didn't have a porch. The staff, as well as people that come and visit us and register for our programs, all seem to love it. It's such a nice setting. There's trees everywhere. This front porch is wonderful. You know, we can come out here and sit and we can eat our lunch. And behind the house, you'll notice there's also a balcony porch on the second floor, which makes it very nice. I'm fortunate to have that in my office. So we're excited about it. We'll be here for about a year or so. And then once the community center opens up, we'll be moving back there, and the seniors will have a lot more space back.
So you'll come out here every now and then. Well, you haven't been out here. This is, I guess it's fairly early in the season.
It is, but we are.
It's gonna get
We're anticipating it. Yeah, it's such a lovely front yard, as you were saying earlier. Our mailbox is down at the end of the walkway, and I'll tell you, we're going to be fighting over who gets to go get the mail because it's such a nice walk down the brick path there. But we've also been talking about getting some type of a glider or swing out here so that we can sit and swing and eat our lunch. We have moved a couple benches onto the front porch here, but we are really looking forward to it. It's just beautiful up here.
Well, that's how the city's using it now. Diane, when did the city take possession of this property?
Was it 1974?
74. It was deeded over to the city, and then in 81, the city renovated it, knew that it was going to be a senior center, and renovated it to become the Falls Church Senior Center. I think it was dedicated in 1982 as the senior center.
The Riley family had a life tenure clause on the property dating back to 1874, and so until the last Riley heir had died, the city was not able to do anything with the property.
And is it a historically protected property or anything, or is it?
Cherry Hill is, and
this by sitting on Cherry Hill
right.
falls into that. Right, it's a very simple house. It's you know, a nice broad porch, and as you said, it's well sited to protect you from the sun. It's very simply detailed, and I like it a lot. I've walked by here a few times and on the way to playing basketball, and actually I've sat on this porch just because I like porches. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this. Getting to see a lot of houses, and as usual, I think I'll pop in and have a look at this one. Mm-hmm. When the city took the building over, was there a lot of renovation, or did I noticed there's now vinyl siding on here? Was that done then as part of the?
It was. They've put new windows in. I'm not sure about inside. Outside, you can pretty much see what they did do. The roof, from what I understand, we'll be getting a new paint job fairly soon. It's an aluminum roof, or maybe a tin roof. I'm not sure.
Did we say it was red at one time?
It was red at one time, and it's now painted green, but the green is coming off, so they are going to be painting it again. But it did go through quite an extensive renovation, from what I understand. And you can see it by the siding that they put on, and there are all new windows inside. They updated the kitchen and the bathrooms and so forth.
New furnace.
Yeah, and air conditioning.
So what are the plans for it after you move back out?
We haven't done anything to the inside, changing walls or anything. We basically work with what was here. So basically, all of our staff will move out, and the seniors will have a little more space. They did have the whole downstairs they used mainly, and now it's sort of been cut in half. We have our front office in the front half of the house. So it'll go back to being used as a senior center. Upstairs, the Historical Commission used one of the larger rooms upstairs, and they've been kind enough to let us use the room. And we've moved their stuff up to the attic. There's a fairly large attic upstairs, so it'll go back to what it was used for previously.
And when this house was built, as you know, part of the overall property, who was living in Cherry Hill at that point? I've been wondering how these two houses. This obviously is oriented out towards this street. Cherry Hill is oriented back out towards Park Avenue. Was that separation for some? I'm asking you as a historian. Did you know of any dirt on the family? Was there anything
no,
going on
I think
there
it was
that
a very
pushed them so far
close
apart?
family.
Perhaps it was a much bigger property. It might have seemed close at that point.
Right. At the time when Kathleen first moved here, her mother and sister Betty Stiles, who's a well-known person in Falls Church. There's been a lot of history done with Betty Stiles and the Betty Stiles oral history stories, which we use at Cherry Hill. So Betty and her parents were living at Cherry Hill at the time. They moved out in 1927. But as far as I know, the Riley sisters were very close, and it was
That's nice to
wonderful
hear.
having a sister just, you know.
Well, it was a nice excuse to walk across the very nice park. Well, it wasn't a park then, but their nice property to go visit each other. Well, it's been real nice getting to meet with you all here, and I'm going to walk across the property now and have a look around, and if you don't mind, go back in and have a look at the place in there and see what you've done with it. And
Sure.
I really appreciate it.
Nearly every street in Falls Church was arched over with trees. You walked under a bower. That's what made Falls Church so attractive.
Look at all these hollies here. I don't think I've ever seen so many in one place before.
They're very much the same size, too, it appears. They were planted at the same time.
So they planted these holly trees around official buildings dating back to the colonial era.
It was very popular, boxwoods, magnolias, and hollies. There's several here.
Well, you know, this is called, as you saw from the sign up there, this is Cherry Hill Farm. Now, as I'm looking around, what do you see?
Well, the Virginia Historic Landmark and the National Register of Historic Places.
Actually, what I meant is what kind of trees do you see?
I see hollies, boxwood, but all hollies.
So maybe instead of Cherry Hill Farm, we should call it
Holly Hill.
Or
Hollywood.
Da, 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 da.
Yeah, put Falls Church on the map once again.
Yeah, Hollywood East.
These holly trees, when you're in the north, they're seedlings and saplings, and you see an awful lot of them. They just don't grow as large as they do as the further south you
So you
go.
see them as understory?
Yes, sir,
Like you see
understory
'em
trees, right.
In the woods
Means
itself.
under that first story,
Yeah, like
exactly,
of
much
oaks
smaller.
and beech and...
More decorative, small, like shrub almost. And as you get further south, you'll see, you know, them in larger sizes and stands like you see here. And in fact, if this had a few more trees, which would say maybe another half dozen in the front, you could actually call this a hollywood. And many of the hollywoods would have clear, because they're older, the lower branches were gone because of the light. And all of the trunk, the clear trunk, would be almost like a plateau area that you could just walk through with a plateau of leaves above you. And it was a very dense forest look. And with this light bark, it would almost be illuminating the walkway.
Now that would only happen in the woods. I mean, when you have them growing individually like this, that wouldn't happen.
Right.
Now, you mentioned Hollywoods. I've never seen one.
No, I haven't either. I've traveled a lot. I've seen some really beautiful woods in France, really mature forests, and in Colorado, you know, a lot of different types of woods. And I've seen the sequoias, and I've seen a lot of different woods, and it's really fascinating.
But they used to have Hollywoods here in the United States.
Yes.
And we don't anymore.
No.
Do you know why?
Well, a lot of people trim these up for various uses. Obviously, at Christmas, it's extremely popular, and people made money by making wreaths and such. And so this was a free commodity, so they would get really chopped, and then the plant could not live with such few leaves to feed itself.
That's interesting. Now they need very rich soil, don't they?
Yes.
So what would happen, I guess, when the settlers would find hollies, what did that tell them, I guess?
Yeah, it's good soil.
Good soil, and
So they'd take them out.
there goes the Hollywood. You know,
Farms brought money.
So the only Hollywood we have left is the one that makes the imaginary stories we see on the film, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well. Well, what are some other characteristics that are berries?
Berries.
Let's
People
go see a
love the
berry.
berries.
Wanna go
Yeah.
see a
So
berry?
do the birds. The birds like the
Now,
berries.
this is not the right time, but there's a few left, aren't there?
Yes,
What's
we
the-
saw some on this tree up here. Let's take a look.
What's the best time for berries?
They actually are green in the summer, and then they turn red. In fall you see them sort of changing to orange, and then winter is the best time for the. Well, here's some berries, Dave. We're able to discover some beautiful red ones here that are underneath.
And this is, when are we here now?
We are here in March 23rd. Today's 23rd, right?
Yeah, something.
And it's a beautiful spring day. We've had a little bit of cold, and today's one of the first beautiful warm days we've had for a while. We've had some in February, but this is a terrific day, and we have some berries to show you, but there's not many on this tree now.
Now, I've heard stories of why holly is so important around Christmas, and like mistletoe is so important, is because it's one of the few trees that has very deep green
Yes.
in the winter, and so when we're passing from the shortening time of the year, going up toward the solstice,
Right.
this was a sign of life, just like
Yes.
mistletoe was.
Yes, exactly.
And I think rosemary was another one
Yes.
that they'd bring in. And so by bringing these in with the red berries, even though the berries are poisonous to people, it was a sign of life, therefore Christmas and
Right.
all of that. And so they actually decimated. Now, we've actually caught people in the park
Clipping
clipping it,
ivy.
and that is against the law because
Right.
it's not good for the holly. And in fact, there are people who should know better.
Right.
Right, so we want to make sure people do not do this on city land because we want to keep the hollies as much as possible.
While we're here, why don't we go over and see the specimen hollies in front of City Hall?
Great, perfect place for them. Well, there's a lot of neat trees on the way. What do we got?
Oh, these are beautiful. It's a nice walk. Oh, look. We have the southern red oak on the right and the walnut and then the red cedar. It's beautiful. And then we've got the boxwood garden, and look at that beautiful holly. This is one of the three specimen holly trees that go through the process. They're recommended by the Tree Commission to the City Council, and then the City Council approves it to be a Falls Church specimen tree, and that affords it special protection so that it maintains its beauty. They're very striking, beautiful holly tree. It's
Got a
so
nice
unusual to see the beautiful density.
Yeah.
The density on that is very good.
And the shape, it's just
Just perfect.
like that.
Good strong color. It's not chloritic. It doesn't have a lot of, there's no yellowing. It's just beautiful.
Now, unfortunately, what do we have at the bottom here? Got all this ivy.
Yeah,
That's climbing up. That's bad for the tree.
yeah.
Yeah, gotta
And
get rid of
unlike
that.
the other trees we saw, the other tree we showed earlier with the fused trunk, this is one solid trunk, diameter looking to be about 2 feet across. It's
Yeah, we
really
recommend that if
beautiful.
anybody has
Ivy.
English ivy around a tree, to get rid of it.
Yes.
Get rid of that stuff. That'll slowly deteriorate your tree roots and tree trunk.
Yeah, because most of your feeder roots are on right at the soil surface, from soil surface down 6 inches
Yeah.
or a little bit more, but the ivy is like a teenage kid. I mean, it just eats everything in its path, so it sucks up all that energy and
Yeah.
moisture.
And it rots everything around it too. Yeah. But this is a gorgeous tree. Wow. Everybody should come over. This is right next to the parking lot. Let's go over and see the other two.
Oh, yeah. Wow, these are beautiful. As many times as I've been in City Hall, I haven't appreciated how beautiful these are.
I think
This
they
one
make
especially.
the building beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, there have been many attempts over the past 10 years to have these taken down because they say it blocks the view of City Hall. But I strongly disagree, and I think they make City Hall look like a southern city hall. I mean,
It affords a very established appearance because you've got a beautiful, dense, thick, tall tree, and it sort of adds to the fact that the City Hall's been here for some time, and we should be proud of that.
right.
That's gorgeous.
And
Look at all the berries still on that, all the way up.
That's an excellent example. And that is a specimen tree, so we now have it protected.
Good.
It's great. Let's look at the other one.
Okay. Just a few feet away. It looks like it's been cut at the base, and in fact, there's a fresh break there.
Yeah, that one's been hacked. Well, they had some other small trees back there, and I have a feeling.
That didn't
and when
help.
they were painting,
Yeah.
I think some of the people that came in got a little excited, overexcited.
This
there.
one's still really nice. It looks like it's a few feet shorter, and it's not quite as densely branched as the one we saw just a minute ago.
It doesn't have as deep a color either.
No.
So I mean that says that it's not as healthy either. Well, I think these 3 trees are the best examples we have. And who said Falls Church wasn't a little bit like Hollywood?
Yes, really.
Uncle George used to take me down to Mankin's Notions and Dry Goods, a corner store at Broad and Washington, where the office building is now. She always had candy, which was something we couldn't have at home. It was a great treat for me to go to Mrs. Mankin's store and have those marvelous penny candies. Uncle George used to carry me down to the store and get them for me. Mother didn't approve, but he did it just the same. I enjoyed it.
I want to drive one of those Bobcats.
Today we're at Sizzler's Stone. It's right here in the city of Falls Church, and I'm told it's one of the gathering spots. And let's go inside and see why this is one of the gathering spots in the city of Falls Church. Pennsylvania flat, or how about Virginia flat?
No, got Pennsylvania, I got West Virginia. Now come right out here and I'll show you the difference. Overall, the stone is a little bit thicker, and then usually you choose a pallet or pick the stone that best suits what you're going to build.
I hear this is a real fun gathering spot, that there's a lot of good stories being told, and that there might be some other sizzlers around here.
Oh yeah, this gang.
Can we
yeah, come on.
get a
let's
tour?
See what we can find. That's Donnie Sizzler. There's plenty of them around. Grandfather came here on this spot in about 1937. It was a monument works in the beginning, tombstone.
Oh, really?
And then sawmill was in here.
Okay.
Saw a lot of the timber around Falls Church that was cut, and then in the early 50s, roughly, when they quit doing the monument part of it, and what you see now really evolved from about that time to just a stone yard as we see here now.
How many sizzlers work here?
All right, well, right now we're all cousins.
All cousins, okay.
Basically, now you got Donnie and Steve, who you haven't seen yet, are brothers. Mark and myself and Mark's wife are here. So that's pretty much the sisters, per se, that are left.
Okay.
And,
I got 5 out of that total.
Then another cousin, Butch, he's a retired fireman, but he comes down and works part-time, drives a truck or works here on the yard, whatever we need him to do at any given day that he can work when he's not doing retirement things. And then Ben, who's Donnie and Steve's father, he's still active in the company and such that if I need him down here for something, he lives up in the country now, he can come down for a couple of days.
Oh, that's
and
great.
His wife is still active as far as the secretary part of it when we need him.
That's great.
Vacation times and things like that you got to bring in. So most everything stays within the family, and then of course
Fantastic.
with the laborers, and then a lot of the employees are father and sons, and they've been around so long that they're almost like family. So
That's fantastic.
it's the way it works here.
Really
of
a
course-
family business.
Of course, like any family, we have our squabbles, fighting, cussing, and all that. Usually early in the morning, you know. Well, we got time.
So you get to drive around in the backhoe and much?
Oh yeah.
That is like one of my lifetime dreams, is to drive a backhoe. So you think
Well-
we could squeeze that in?
Sure.
All right.
A lot of times the schools will come in on a field trip, and or somebody come in's got a kid, you know, and they're really excited about it. Well, the little ones I can put up in there with me. The real little, I hold them on my lap, but the others can sit. All right, go ahead and climb up in there.
All right. I bet you the school kids didn't get to drive that around now.
Most all of your gravels and sands come in various grades. You know, where you've got the river jack comes in two sizes, or general sizes, you know, like a 3 to 5 and a 5 to 8. Then you move into what's called river rock. That's the bigger stuff. Your sand, you got fine sand or masonry sand, and the coarse sand or the concrete sand. You got white sand, you got various grades of bluestone for driveways or walkways. Or
You're
stone
starting to
dust.
sound a little like that character in the Forrest Gump movie that kept talking about the different kinds of shrimp.
Like your slates, Vermont, Buckingham, your Pennsylvania flagstone, your Tennessee flagstone, your Colorado rose, parking curves, flash block.
I loved going to the village. Everybody knew everybody. I would say, "Hello, Mrs. Brown," or "Hello, Mr. Hawkshurst," and they would all know me and my kin.
We're here with one of the familiar faces of Falls Church today, Mr. G. Galt Brady. And Mr. Brady is one of our most senior former council members that's still around in Falls Church, and has a lot of stories that most people don't know. And we'll find out a couple of those today. But welcome, Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Dave. Good to see you.
Now, when did you have your first meeting with Falls Church?
Well, it goes back probably to at least when I was 5 years old, because that's as far back as I can remember.
That was about 1980, wasn't it?
Yeah, almost.
Right.
Yes. No, I was living in Herndon, but my grandparents had built a house in Falls Church. In fact, right here where we are sitting now, in this townhouse subdivision that we're in now, Church View, is formed on 3 pieces of property, and one of them was my grandparents.
Now, just so everybody knows, we're about a block back east of Applebee's, by the up the crossroads. And what's this? It's 200 block, it says, of East Broad. Yeah.
That's right. So my grandparents built the house here in 1935. He was a retired minister, and Grandma and Grandpa decided to retire here to Falls Church. I was living in Herndon as a little 5-year-old kid then, but my daddy was cashier of the Falls Church Bank.
Now, when you say cashier, back then cashier
He was
was
the-
a very high level position.
Well, that was the man who ran the bank on
Sure.
a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And so I'd come down here on Saturdays with him and just visit with Grandma and Grandpa.
So you lived there the rest of your growing up days?
I continued to live there through high school, and it was my home when I was in college and law school from 46 to 52, and it was my home of record when I was in the service for a couple of years after that. And then I continued to live there for a couple of years till I got married and got a house on Berry Street.
And that's just, it sounds like it must have been about the time you got on council.
I got on, I got a wife, got on council about the same time.
Took a lot of responsibility on.
No, like I said then at the time, somebody said, "Why are you running for council?" One of these public forums where they're asking candidates penetrating questions.
Right. What's your favorite color?
Yeah, penetrating questions. Why are you running for council? And I said, I just opened a law office. I'm dead broke, and it pays $50 a month. I need the money.
And that's what made you win, right?
Probably so.
Now, in that was in the late 50s, right?
That was 57, yeah.
Okay, so that was quite a while ago, and I imagine things were a little bit different than they are now.
I would suppose they were simpler. Everybody thinks so, anyhow.
Yeah,
so.
right. Interesting. Was it as contentious then as it is now?
Oh, probably more so, because our council was so bad by a lot of people's standards.
People still say that. No, they don't. They don't. Really.
Hey, listen, that's why you got the CBC group out here, because we were the ones that they had had enough of.
Oh, that's funny.
Absolutely.
Well, you had some interesting stories about when you were growing up. Like you went to the school that's no longer there, the Jefferson Institute or high school over where Frady Park is now.
Yeah.
What's your memory of that?
Oh, it was a dreadful place. Everybody knew, it's one of these true facts. Facts are things that everybody knows are true, even if they're not. And we all knew that place had been a soap factory. It was just that bad. But school was pretty bad, it was pretty primitive, but Fairfax County schools were primitive in those days. You only had 4 of them: Herndon, Jefferson, Fairfax, and Mount Vernon. They were the only public schools in all the county.
Interesting.
And it was sort of a farmer's culture, as it were, a school board that probably is mostly farmers and rural people. And it was after my sophomore year in 9th grade that I went into Western High School in D.C.
Well, how'd you get there?
In those days, the boys at least would get up in front of the State Theater and stick their thumbs out. It was wartime.
Must have been kind of crowded up in front of the State Theater.
There were quite a few of us who would hitchhike in. You could always count on certain people to give you rides.
Who gave you yours?
Oh, there were a lot of people, but one of them, and you'll be especially interested in this, lady who lived up Lawton Street here, who is a big lady with the Village Preservation Society, Ms. Shepherd.
Oh, she founded the first attic treasure sale.
Yes, and she and her husband, I think he was at GW, they were academic types. And but they would be coming by, and as I recall, an old 1934 Ford. And you could always count on the Shepherds to give you a ride down across Key Bridge, and they'd drop us off at Elm Street, and the kids then would walk on up.
Probably had some interesting conversations with them, didn't you?
I don't really remember that,
okay.
But they were obviously well-educated people.
Well, tell me about, like you say, in the 40s or something, like when you were going around town. If you were in your house right here and you're going down to the Village, meaning 1 block down, where would you go?
Well, I was thinking about that here the other day because nothing's there anymore. One place was the drugstore, of course, there. Drugstore down the corner.
Was that Robertson's at that time?
Well, no, the drugstore itself, I think Macon Ware owned it, but he also had Ware's Pharmacy in East Falls Church.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
But Eddie Prince is sort of the general manager of the place. But the best thing to me was they had a soda fountain, a real old-fashioned soda fountain. But all drugstores used to have soda fountains. Sure. This was nice marble bar up there, and at least half a dozen stools and some little tables with cafe chairs.
Sounds like the one It's a Wonderful Life, that movie. Yeah.
Probably just about like that, but there you could get real milkshakes and real sodas. And
what was your favorite?
Oh, a chocolate soda.
Chocolate soda, yeah.
Yeah, and because they could put the fizz water in under pressure on the ice cream with the syrup, and then put more soda water on top, and then put some whipped cream on top of that and a cherry on. But then also something that was so good, because we didn't have anything up in Herndon like it, was the bakery next door to the drugstore down there, Mazinski's Bakery. And to go in there, and it's the first time in my life I'd ever eaten stuff like really fresh donuts, really fresh Danish pastry or cinnamon rolls or something that had just come right out of the oven, put in the case there.
Ooh.
And I'd never had anything like that before, so that was a place of great wonder.
Now, was that on North Washington or on Broad Street?
On Broad Street
It's on
there.
Broad Street, okay.
Yeah.
So we had men's clothing, we had women's clothing, we had a
Yeah.
bakery, we had a counter, we had our
So-
own stone bank, a beautiful bank.
Yeah.
Sounded like it was a pretty neat little village to go down to.
Well, you know, I guess it was there. It was just there, and I don't think I reflected too much on all of that.
But then you had the State Theater.
Ah, yes. The
And tell me about that. Like, when could you get to see the films?
I'd go there anytime. The state, of course, they got movies right after the first run movies had finished downtown on F Street there. Had the first run theaters down there, Lowe's Capitol, Lowe's Palace, the Warner Theater, Keith's. And within about 3 or 4 weeks after the shows had finished there, the state would get them. So they were the first. And shows would be there at the state typically Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then there'd be another show Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. And the admission was certainly reasonable enough, as I recall, not more than a quarter. But State was a nice place because, like the theaters, they were the first places to get air conditioning. So, but after the war, the State had a nice sign draped from the marquee in hot weather with big block letters, air conditioned inside. And this proclaimed a very glorious place.
That's great. Now, Brown's. How about Brown's Hardware?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well,
Did you go in there?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Mr. Brown knew me personally, of course, because, well, he knew my father because Mr. Brown had stock in the bank. He was the director of the bank, and that's where Daddy worked.
Okay.
So, knew the Browns well, and a couple of my contemporaries had little jobs there, particularly weekends and summer. People that names wouldn't mean much now, but like Billy Moore, George Feldman, or somebody like that.
Now, was that strictly a hardware store back in the 40s?
Oh, no. Brown sold groceries at one time and delivered. They delivered groceries, they sold groceries, and hardware was just one of the lines. It was very much a general store.
Okay. What was next door on the far side of it?
I've been trying to recall. It was a series of houses. It wasn't far down the street, but it was certainly a little bit, 3 or 4 doors down, that there was a DGS store. That was District Grocery Stores. These were independent stores, but they had a little common marketing operation, I guess, DGS. And the lady who ran that place, a very unpleasant old lady, as I recall, Ms. Dobkin, but she didn't have time for anybody, and politeness was not her strong suit.
Tell me about now. You've been in Falls Church. We had all these things. Where's your favorite hangouts now?
Falls Church is just a marvelous town from my perspective, and just to get out and stroll, to walk, and I try to get out and walk 2 or 3 miles several times a week.
That's where I see you.
Yeah,
I see you all over the place.
And you see,
Generally with your beret on.
well, if this were a cooler day, I'd be wearing the beret to avoid heat loss.
Well, I really thank you for being with us today, and you're a great familiar face to have.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here and enlighten those who come after.
I heard music everywhere in town. A lot of folks had pianos and other instruments in their homes, and I could just walk up and down the street and hear people playing pianos and violins and singing. Some fellows were always sitting on the front steps of the stores down by the crossroads playing harmonica. Of course, there was music at church on Sundays and Wednesdays. A band always played at town picnics. One of my favorite things was dances at the Oddfellows Hall.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at Schumann Recording Studios with Scott Schumann. And yes, there really is music everywhere. All right. Scott. All right. Now, what kind of blues is that? Tell me the difference. I don't know the difference.
Well, that's kind of the St. Louis blues.
Yeah.
I play with a guy in St. Louis named Henry Townsend, who's one of the original Delta blues men. And when I do gigs with him, that's his style that we play. Sort of a St. Louis, like a country blues style.
Right. And the other types would be more...
Well, there's a Chicago style blues, which is more...
Like jazz, isn't it?
Well, it's more like a four on the floor type thing, drums and bass. And the St. Louis blues is more geared towards acoustic guitar and piano, not as much rhythm section oriented.
And other types?
Well, blues, you know, there's a Memphis style, and you know, rhythm and blues, and I do some of that in a local group that I have called the Jackson Street Band, and we do R&B and Chicago style blues.
You know, we're really fortunate. It's truly tucked away here in Falls Church City, and I don't think many of us know about your recording studios, and maybe it's better for that. But tell me, what are you doing now? Who are you recording with? And
well, right now we're working with Flatfoot Sam and the Educated Fools, which is a swing blues, a different kind of blues. I forgot about that. So we're doing an album for them for a record label in Maryland. And then we're getting ready to, in April, we'll be doing a third record with Henry Townsend from St. Louis.
Right.
We do a fair amount of Irish and Celtic folk music, which is kind of a different from my experience. But certainly I enjoy the recording of it. It's acoustic music, and that's kind of what we do here in the studio is real recording. We don't do much sequencing or sampling. It's mostly live acoustic recording.
Well, you know, it's another example for us who live in Falls Church City, where we really didn't know about the proud heritage that exists here. These recordings are all famous. We know these people. This is wonderful.
Yeah, we have had a chance to do some historical recordings here, particularly with our friends from St. Louis, and we're looking forward to working with a couple other bluesmen from different areas of the country later this year. So we're trying to, you know, and that's what it's about. The recording business. It's not as much about the money being made. It's about being able to do something worthwhile.
Do you make your recording studio available to outside groups? I mean, is it available?
We're pretty much available to the public, although we do somewhat pick and choose the artists we do work with.
Right.
So I don't do much heavy metal, or, you know, this is kind of out of my realm of experience. So
I'm confused. When someone wants to use Schumann Studios, do you actually help them, or do you just move out and let them take it over?
No, we engineer. We work with the client, the artist, to bring their project to fruition, and you know, whatever is involved with that.
I know you're gonna show us the control room and other areas. Can you play a little bit more for us?
Okay, I'll do a little Chicago style blues here.
All right.
This is a little different deal. Here, let's see.
All right.
Kind of more of a geared towards drums and rhythm section, horns and that sort of thing. So,
Scott, it's a pleasure knowing you. I know you were born and raised in this area, and it's a pleasure knowing that Schumann Studios is open to the public. Let's go to the control room. What do you say?
Good.
All right. I still need more information on this guy coming from the West Coast to mix your recording.
Well, he's a friend of ours that helped us design this control room.
Right.
He's a Grammy Award-winning engineer. His name is Paul Grupp, and he's coming to help me mix down a couple projects.
Mixing, so we take the guitar feed, we take the bass feed, we take the vocal.
We've got 24 individual tracks of music
Right.
on 2-inch tape, and what we need to do is mix it down to two tracks in stereo. So he'll do that.
Why not just play it and pick whatever sounds best?
Well, it's part of the process of making a record, adding different ambiances to the drums,
Right.
maybe a different type of echo to the vocals, special effects to a guitar part or whatever. So to make it, it's the difference between a record and just a recording of a band. So
Ladies and gentlemen, I've never seen so many buttons in one studio. You gotta tell us what we have here.
Well, this is our control room.
Right.
And we use a couple different formats, a couple different kinds of tape recorders. We have a 1-inch tape recorder behind me, which is a 16-track tape recorder that can actually record 16 different parts at different times on the same piece of tape.
Right.
So then we have a 24-track tape recorder, and then we have the standard 1/4-inch 2-track stereo type of tape recorder, which most people are familiar with.
Well, I thought everything was going digital. Tell me why we're doing analog.
Well,
what's going on here?
We have digital equipment here, and we have quite a few digital recorders. We have the 24-bit, the state-of-the-art. And I've found, just from my experience, that I think digital misses something that's an intangible quality of the music. It's the feel of the music that I don't think digital quite translates.
Well, whatever it is, it's working. I can just have taken some of these off the wall. Mike Melchione, Jeff Smith, who's a local person, Flying Cows of Entry. I know they've been up at 4Ps and all around the country.
That's probably the hottest Irish band in the area.
Is that right? I heard them
pretty
every New Year's
popular,
Eve. Yeah. And Squeeze You by Steppin' Fast.
Squeeze By You.
Squeeze By You.
And that's a Zydeco Cajun group that is pretty phenomenal, local group.
I recognize some of these people. Henry Townsend, tell me about him. He's blues, right?
Henry is the grandfather of the St. Louis blues.
Yeah.
He's recorded since 1929. He wrote Every Day Have the Blues that B.B. King had a big hit with. He's recorded actually in every decade since the 1920s. So he's done 2 records with us here.
Who is Gay Adebayola?
Gay Adebayola. She's worked in here a couple times, and she's a recording artist on Alligator Records.
We know Iona of
Yeah.
Northern Virginia, Celtic band. And
that's Henry again.
That's Henry again.
Louis.
Very impressive. Are you going to be recording soon? What's in the future?
Well, right now I'm doing a project for that's being produced by a fellow named Pete Raguso, who is a drummer with a local group called the Nighthawks. He's also a record producer. He's recording a group called Flatfoot Sam and the Educated Fools, which is like a swing blues group, which is just phenomenal musicians. So we're finishing that, and actually my friend Paul from Los Angeles is going to help mix that project down next week. So then we just started a second CD with Iona, the Celtic group, and they're just it's a phenomenal band in that genre.
What's the time that it takes from beginning to end? You decide on a recording of a musician, and when's it in
That's
production?
what people ask me. They say, how long does it take to make a CD? And I say, well, it takes what it takes.
Yeah.
People will spend anywhere from $2,000 to $15,000 to record a project, and usually it depends how well they're rehearsed and how much time they waste in the studio.
Scott Schulman, we were really pleased to have you as a member of the community and a great addition and providing that music.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, buddy.
Sometimes I would walk to and from the village along the roads, but I loved to walk the trails and alleys behind houses, through fields and woods. It just seemed more special.
Well, we're here today at one of the little-known trails of Falls Church that is used by a lot of the children, a lot of the adults of the area, known as Whiskey Hill Trail. Now, this trail was a result of when the Greenway Down subdivision was put in over off South Washington Street. They needed to have an easement for the storm drain, where an old stream used to go down and drain, and they decided it was easier to have this easement as public property rather than part of private property. So they left an area with the pieces of fence along each side going up 4 blocks between West Westmoreland and Marshall Street. And it was really for storm drainage, so they could get in to fix the storm drain. What it's become is a major trail that is used by all the neighbors on getting from one part of the subdivision to another. And this portion of the hill has had many different names, but the one that has the most romantic ring to it is Whiskey Hill. And this was called Whiskey Hill during the Prohibition period because there was a still right up by Rosemary Lane. If you went straight up, you'd go right to where that still was. And so all the people around here referred to this as Whiskey Hill. So we're heading up Whiskey Hill. It has different segments. Remember, there's private houses on either side. And it depends on how this has been maintained in different ways along different segments. But let's take a walk up it and see what we can see. In this first portion of the trail here, I've kept it maintained with mulch because this part gets very muddy. And you can see it has to be cut back. The shrubs and vines grow over it. But the mulch, the wood mulch, keeps it from being muddy and after a rain, and also makes it pleasant to walk on. It's much more pleasant to walk on the mulch than it is on mud or dirt or hard packed dirt. Very pleasant in this area, walking in the shade with occasional patches of sun, walking from one street to the other. It's much more pleasant. It's about 20 degrees cooler in the summer. I have to pick up litter every time. And then as we go into the next segment before we reach Cameron, the area is grassed. We haven't mulched it. It's just the grass, and one of the neighbors mows it regularly. And you can see coming up the reason for being for this trail. You can see the storm drain cover right here. Looks like somebody's poured something into it they shouldn't have. And sometimes you have to walk around areas where some things have been stacked up. As we cross the street, it's hard to tell where if you didn't know better, you wouldn't know this trail was here, or you'd think it was private property, but it is in fact public. And it's been planted on by neighbors and made narrower, but we're walking on public land right now. And walking up. And it's quite pleasant through here. It's the fastest way to get there, wherever you're going. Now we're between Cameron and Greenway. This part hasn't been mulched, but it doesn't get as muddy during the rainy season because it's high ground and it runs right off. You even have a little house along the side of the trail here today. You never know what you're going to see on the Whiskey Hill Trail. Now we got some steps going up. Gets a little steeper here, so one of the neighbors put in some steps to make life more pleasant for everybody coming up. Everybody kind of takes care of their own portion of the trail in their own way. It's very nice, a nice neighborly thing to do. As now we're heading up a little steeper incline and going up to Cameron Road. Now you begin to feel like you're just on somebody's lawn. It's been just taken care of simply from one property to the other, and if you didn't know better, you wouldn't know you were walking up a public stairs right now. Now we're crossing Greenway Boulevard and heading up the trail here. And believe it or not, this is this is a public trail, and right adjacent to the driveway here. And the ivy's growing over on the right, so you have to kind of skim the side. But now it opens back up into the normal walkway. Every time a new neighbor moves in, often have to be gently reminded that this is public land. So this was one of the neighbors mows this, and going under the bowers of some nice tulip tree. Get a little shade right here. Got the pokeweed poking out. And now we're coming up to George Mason Drive. And here the trail turns into lawn again. And somebody had planted a dogwood right in the middle of the trail. So you just have to ease around that between the two driveways. And we'll see what the next set of neighbors did. Okay, we'll wait. There's a car coming, so we'll wait as we cross George Mason Drive. And one of the neighbors kindly spent quite a bit of money and time and effort and put in I guess it was neighbors or maybe it was the city, I don't really know which, put in a very nice stone path here. So this, you really know that you're on something special here. And this is nicely manicured. This took a lot of time to put the sand down here and dig it out and put in these stones. Now we come up to the next segment as we're coming toward the end of the trail at Marshall. It stops at Marshall Street. And it's a mulched path, so someone then came in and put mulch here again. This is very pleasant. Looks like it needs another batch of it since it's turning into mud in certain areas. But it's nice under the bowers of the trees here. Nice shady area. See, you go from sun to shade so quickly here. And we come up to Marshall Street, which is the headwaters area of the Reagan Valley, which heads down to the right here. But the spring is right up behind this house up here. And this is as far as it went, because this used to be the old Robinson property. And this is the end of the Greenway Downs subdivision. So this is the end of the Whiskey Hill Trail.
One of the most interesting things to me is that right in the middle of Falls Church, right in the middle of one of the fastest urbanizing areas anywhere, we have magnificent old houses and trees, beautiful music still in homes and on the streets, marvelous places to gather, and trails to return home on. It makes me wonder why these wonderful qualities of village life remain here in Falls Church.